What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for June 27th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. It's Tuesday. You know what that means. It's time for a little bit of positivity / motivation. And I came across this quote a few weeks ago, and I've been excited to sort of have it as our Tuesday message. And I think we all can relate to this, and it's something I've been working on personally in my personal life. But when things go wrong, don't go with them. And this is a quote by, of all people, Elvis Presley. But to me, I know when things start going wrong and I start getting down, things just snowball and go with that. And sometimes you need that. I'm not going to lie. But there are times where it gets to the point where if you let your thoughts go and just keep going with it, it gets a little ridiculous. So sometimes I need to kind of remind myself of this and just stop and like, you know what? This sucks. It will get better. It's just a temporary thing. Is this going to matter in 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 years from now? Whatever it could be. And I think it's important to always remember that. And we do that a lot of times to tie it in with sports. We do that with our sports teams. Like Phillies lost 2 games last week to the Braves. Oh, it's over. And then they didn't play the greatest versus the Mets, but everybody's like, oh, but they took 2 out of 3 from the Mets. It's kind of, basically this saying to me means put things into perspective and don't start going down rabbit holes where you're just spiraling out of control. So when things go wrong, don't go with them. Remember, it's only temporary. Remind yourself that it will get better. It might be 10 minutes, 10 weeks, whatever it could be. Whatever is going on is just temporary and it will get better. So there is today's Tuesday motivation / message coming from all people, Elvis Presley. All right. Remember, I've been talking about it for a week now. Back to the Future. Listen to last week's episode. It explains the rules and the unveiling of the brackets for the Philly Sports Lovable Loser Tournament. Thank you for everybody who's provided feedback. I posted the brackets yesterday. So if you go to my Facebook, if you're friends with me on Facebook, they're there. They're pinned on my Twitter, Jimbo_Mont, as well as my Instagram, @PhillyJimbo. Let me know what you think, who got snubbed. Remember to make sure, though, you're listening to Back to the Future. That gives you why teams are seeded the way they are. That's going to get started on Saturday. That's going to continue to keep... I'll keep refreshing and having them posted throughout the week to get you ready for the first matchup starting on Saturday. Also, if you listen on the Spotify app, I've been posting polls and questions based on that day's podcast. Be sure to check that out and interact that way. That's one of the places where we're going to have the matchups for you guys to vote. What I'm going to do is just, at the end of the day, just tally everybody's votes wherever we get them, and that's how we're going to determine the winner. So be sure to listen to Back to the Future with a PH to get the rationale behind the tournament, the unveiling of the brackets, and why teams were seeded the way they were. Go to any of my social media, check out where the brackets are, help get you prepared for the tournament kicking off on Saturday. And if you're listening on the Spotify app, be sure to check out those polls and questions. All right, the NHL draft is tomorrow. Looking for the Flyers to be very, very active over the next 24 hours. I'm sure there's going to be, for tomorrow's episode, lots of updates for the Flyers. I've been holding off on some of the proposed trades that they have in place that are being held up for various reasons. But look for a big day for the Flyers tomorrow. Big day on This Day in Philly Sports History with the Flyers tomorrow. Phil's in action tonight against the Cubs. Ranger Suarez is on the mound for the Phils. And with everything going on between NBA free agency, the Phillies trying to turn the corner and looking to see who they may or may not add during the trade deadline, the NHL draft, the Union being hot, it's a great time to go to PhillyGoat.com. Check out their selection for all the teams. T-shirts, Philly-based apparel. Check them out. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. They have kid sizes. They have hats. You name it, they have it. And be sure when you go down to the bottom, show more, show more. There's a ton that don't show up on the main page. And like I said, I mean, it's just a great company, great quality t-shirts. Use that promo code Jim Montgomery. Show your support this summer down at the shore for your Philly teams. It's great time to show it off and make sure it has the Philly goat on the sleeve. It's a good talking point. Go to the bar, meet some girls, meet some guys. Whoever's listening, whatever you want to do, it's a great conversation starter. So go to phillygoat.com, use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, today we're going to go back to 2010. And on this day in 2010, the Phillies beat the Blue Jays 11-2. Lots and lots and lots to unpack in this game. Very rarely do we have a this day in Philly sports history where we talk about one game that has so many layers to it. So, first part of this game was there were no home runs for the Phillies. And back in that 07 to 2011 teams, they hit a ton of home runs. In this game, they scored 11 runs with no home runs. And they did go 7 for 19 with runners in scoring position, something that this current Phillies team could take some notes from. So there's that. The second and kind of the craziest thing about this is the Phillies, the game was played at Citizens Bank Park, but the Phillies were the away team for this series because the G8 Summit was in Toronto, and the people in Toronto feared with protests and everything like that it needed to be moved to Philly for the safety and just basically to get people away from that downtown Toronto area. So they came and played. Toronto was the home team at Citizens Bank Park. The DH was in play. Toronto, the home team and everything. The only thing that did not change, if I remember correctly, was the Phillies still got to use their locker room and the Blue Jays used the away. But Phillies played at Citizens Bank Park as the away team. All right, third thing, Jamie Moyer got the win. We talked last Thursday about him giving up his 505th home run that tied him for the Major League career record with Robin Roberts. Well, on this day, he gave up his 506th to take over sole possession of first place, which he still holds today. So he gave up his 506th home run. Vernon Wells hit a 2-run homer. It was the only 2 runs for the Blue Jays that game. But wait, there's more. He also pitched his 4,000th career inning. He was the 40th player and last player to ever do 4,000 innings as an active or as a pitcher. He's still at number 40. If you're keeping score at home, Cy Young is number 1 with 7,356 innings. 2 other Phillies are in the top 10, or former Phillies are in the top 10. Steve Carlton comes in at number 9 with just over 5,200 innings. And Grover Cleveland Alexander is at number 10, just a shade under 5,200 innings. So, if you're still keeping score at home, Zach Greinke is the current active leader. He only has 3,300 innings. He's 39 years old, so I doubt that he's going to get to 4,000. And it's also a milestone I don't think we're ever going to see again just because of the way pitchers are managed and things like that. So, to recap, on this day back in 2010, Phillies beat the Blue Jays 11-2. They scored 11 home runs with no home runs, which is a very, very rare feat for that team back then. The Phillies played at Citizens Bank Park as the away team due to the G8 Summit in Toronto, and the officials feared that it's just going to be chaos, and they didn't want violence to break out with protests, so they moved it to Philly, and Toronto played as the home team. Jamie Moyer gave up his Major League record 506th home run in that game to Vernon Wells. He also pitched his 4,000th inning, becoming the 40th and last, probably ever, pitcher to do that in his career. There will be a quiz at the end. All right, we are just rolling along with Rivalry Month. We're getting into some of the bigger rivals now. And this one, I'm going to say, is complicated yet underrated, and that's the Montreal Expos / Washington Nationals rivalry with the Phillies. And in the late 70s, early 80s, while the Phillies had that great team they were putting together, lost in all of that I mean, obviously the Pirates snuck in there in '79. They were one of the Phillies' rivals, but the Expos were right there with those two teams back in that time frame. In fact, in 1980, the Phillies and Expos they played the last weekend of the season, and basically that was a series to see who would win the division and go to the NLCS. The Phillies obviously did beat them. Montreal got their revenge the year later. They beat the Phillies in a divisional series, and that was the year there was a strike that happened in the middle of the season. So they had the first half winner and the second half winner in each division play each other in a 3-game, or I think it was a 5-game series. Montreal did beat the Phillies. In 1993, guess who? Montreal was right there. They were only 3 games back, believe it or not. The Phillies led almost wire to wire that year, but Montreal just kept chipping away. And then in 94, when the strike happened, Montreal was in first place. The Phillies, I believe, were in second place, and they were battling out there. When they moved in 2004, I think it kind of jump-started and increased this rivalry because of how close and how easy it was to get to D.C. I remember that first year when they played at RFK. I went down to a Nationals game. We took a bus trip. It was just fun to take over their stadium when the Phillies were good. They had the Phillies takeover. In '07 and '08, the team they beat to win the division, even though they weren't any good, were the Nationals. And then after that Phillies run ended, that's sort of where the Nationals picked up and started dominating the Phillies with Bryce Harper, Max Scherzer, and those guys. And then if this wasn't bad enough, the year after Bryce Harper leaves the Nationals to come to the Phillies, the Nationals win the World Series. Like kind of just like a little kick in the teeth. But Phillies lead the all-time series 483 to 447. Like I said, I think this is an underrated rivalry. I think it's complicated because they moved to two different. It spans two different cities and really two different franchises. But if I had to rate this, I'm rating it a 4 out of 5 just because of the proximity. They're not quite the Mets, but I could make the argument that maybe the Nationals are up there with the Braves as a Phillies rival based on just if it's just the Nationals, I think you can make that argument. But then you throw in the history with the Expos, and I think that amps it up another level. So the Montreal Expos / Washington Nationals rivalry will score a 4 out of 5. On this day, back in 2010, the Phillies beat the Blue Jays 11-2 in a game which they were the away team at Citizens Bank Park. Jamie Moyer set a couple records that probably will never be touched. So the quiz is coming, so don't worry about that. But be sure to go to phillygoat.com. Use that promo code Jim Montgomery. Check out Back to the Future. Go to my social media to check out the brackets. Give me feedback. Who got snubbed? Who's overrated? Who's underrated? All that good stuff. If you're on Spotify, I'll have some questions on there as well just to get some of that interaction going. And remember, when things go wrong, they start going south, don't follow them. Remind yourself that it's only temporary and things will get better. Hopefully everybody is safe. Some nasty storms came through here last night. And I saw there's still trees and everything down. So if you're driving to work, just be careful. Trees, wires, whatever could be down. It's supposed to be a lot nicer today. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come. And again, we're not going to go down that road. When things go wrong, we're staying positive on this. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Tuesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.